Hello again, everyone. Chris Hallam again, this time from Calgary up in Canada. It was an important one last night. Hopefully be done tomorrow. Get to go home. And I think I misunderstood. I'm going to answer questions 1, 2, and 3 on this one, and the other video you can see on my question 4. So I'll try to keep this within the time constraints that we have. So about another 10 minutes or so. But first. Be referring to my notes here. Going to discuss the previous models that we already looked at. Starting, of course, with the Heinrich's domino theory. Of course, he was kind of the introduction and the instigator to this whole idea of looking at accident causation and even a chain of events that leads to an accident. So there were a few problems, I think, with his theories, but he did a great job of coming up with something new in an era when nobody had really quantified or looked at this. One of the problems he had with it, though, I think, was the ability or the tendency to place blame on individuals, and especially in our litigious society, that is can be a major problem when you're coming to try and find a solution to these accidents and so forth. But he talked about ancestry and social environment and being accident prone as well, fault of the person, unsafe act, being next mechanical or physical hazard, then the accident itself, and finally injury. So after that, we talked about the loss causation model, which kind of improved on Heinrich's theories significantly. I think probably in its best contribution in changing the domino theory was the emphasis on performance standards and beginning to look not necessarily at people but at management as being a cause. That's the first thing to look at is lack of control in the loss causation with inadequate safety programs or non-compliance, those kind of things for management. It moves into basic causes, and then immediate causes, and then the actual incident or contact, and then following that, the loss. Next, we started to move into the complex linear models, starting with energy damage, which looked at the hazard and as being kind of contained by a hazard control mechanism of some kind. Then a space transfer mechanism, which takes that hazard to a recipient, which also has a boundary, and once that boundary has reached its limit, then you're going to have an accident of some kind. From there, we moved into the time sequence model. It came from the need to define, basically a timeline for a start and an end to any accident. It's divided into 3 time zones, preconditions in time zone 1. Time zone 2, you have a lot going on. There's mechanisms, the actual event itself, and the outcome, and then finally consequences in time zone 3. I personally really like this time sequence model. I found it, at least I felt, fairly easy to break some of these accidents down into the time zone. Gave a lot of fairly broad categories where you can start to piece some of these bits of the accident timeline together, but you can add a lot to each different time zone, and it is fairly broad in how far out you want to take the consequences or how far forward, in the past you want to go for the preconditions in time zone 1. And then most recently we looked at the epidemiological model. This one I can see in certain circumstances how it's definitely could be applied, and in other circumstances I can see how it'd be a difficult model to apply, which I'll talk about in a little bit for how we apply that to our case study this week. So overall, it's been an incredible class. Been learning lots and lots. Really excited to keep going. Really love the discussions that everybody's that we've been able to have on the discussion boards and the thought-provoking questions. So yeah, really looking forward to continue. For the next question 2, says speak on the epidemiological model and your personal opinion, which is good, how it applies to our case study. I did have a little bit of trouble applying it to the case study this week as far as the DHL and the Tupolev aircraft went. I broke it down looking at the triangle. The agent I put as the opposite aircraft, as in the end that was well, that's where I could, I guess, best find a fit for that. The environment, I looked at the two. The of course, the air traffic control environment was one, as well as the cockpit environment for the other one. And then the host would be the person involved. I'd say, depending on the environment, it was a different person, how you want to break it down, but one would be the Russian crew, and the other, I would say, would be air traffic control, and down in that environment as well. Looking at the environment, as far as poor management goes, whether they realize it or not, I think only having one person be on duty at any given time, even though it was a lower workload, for efficiency, in the end it came back to bite them. And maybe they didn't realize that at first. It was unfortunate that all these events came together in such a sequence. Also, the breaks being allowed, the lengthy breaks at night being allowed. In the other cockpit environment, in the cockpit environment, I would say some of the things would be difficult. Talking about social context would be how a first officer in a Russian aircraft relates to his superior officer, his captain or whatever in the back. Probably not a lot of CRM going on where people are free to have a good environment to speak up. Of course, that's an assumption on my part, but as far back as this was, it's very possible, I think. And then predisposition for susceptibility, I just talk along the lines for air traffic control, and that we all have our limits to how much we can handle, and I believe, especially with what was going on that night, he had more than he could handle, with the phones being down, his equipment being substandard, at least temporarily, and all the other stuff going on, the other Airbus that came in late that he had to manage. I think he was susceptible to, on one level, of not being able to manage the various tasks within the time frame he was given. Last question I'll talk about here real quick. Is question 3. After reading the article on accidents with pilots who had prior alcohol offenses, what are my thoughts? And how can we apply the epidemiological model in this instance? I felt the epidemiological model fit this instance a little bit easier for me than the DHL accident. I felt that one was quite complex, and a complex, probably nonlinear model is going to fit that one extremely well, is my hunch. But for the alcohol-related, the article, it mentioned several statistics that I found pretty surprising. One, that they had an 85% success rate in rehabilitation for folks on the that had been caught and then had been rehabilitated. So that's actually, to me at least, it seems like a pretty amazing figure. The other amazing figure, which is not so good, is that they estimate that for everybody that's caught, there's 1,000. They've driven drunk 1,000 times before they get caught, which is a bit alarming. Epidemiological model to be applied with this, again using the triangle agent, would be alcohol. The environment, it would be, that can vary widely. The environment could, I think, have be just lead to depression if it's a really bad or difficult home environment or working environment. It can be a social context where people are encouraged to drink more than they need to. And last, of course, the host is the person, and if we can break those or blunt those corners by taking away the environment or making it better, or take away the alcohol somehow, or the agent, then we can help get the person back on track. I know there are several programs out there. I know HIMS is one that our union uses for those that are struggling with that, but and it has been shown to be effective. I don't have numbers on how effective it has been, but But yeah, those are my thoughts so far. Thanks for listening. Tune in next time.